Dear relatives, friends and distinguished guests, thank you for attending today so that we can together mourn and celebrate the life of this remarkable man. Jim was born in the village Dolnokotori, Macedonia, on the 15th of September 1944. He was born in the barn where the livestock were usually kept. He told me this, and when we eventually went there, we looked around and thought, is this really the place? It's quite surprising. Due to the impoverished lifestyle and the circumstances of their time, his parents, Kole and Rada, had already lost Jim's older brother, Paul, as an infant. Living in the mountains of Macedonia made him a vigorous boy, and although his family didn't have enough money for food or clothing, his bond with and memories of his beloved homeland were inextricable and were something he carried with him all his life. He talked of having no shoes and running across the entire village, barefoot at the peak of winter snow blizzards. Apparently a mouthful of wine as a young child gave him enough heat in his body to attempt such antics. Anyone who's shared a drink with my father at the Lockleys or Lynx hotels, for example, might appreciate this head start in life in relation to alcohol. As he reached 11 years of age, he became all too aware of the day-to-day struggle for existence his family was enduring in a country where being a Macedonian was becoming more and more difficult. Around this time, I'm reminded of a story where he and his parents were sitting at the table for dinner. His father, Kole, his mother, Rada, and Dad, with the entire dinner comprising one small plate on the table holding 2 olives. Kole pushed the plate towards his son and wife, Rada, saying he wasn't hungry. Rada pushed the plate towards young Jim, saying she was not hungry. They were both typically placing his needs before their own, hoping he might have a fighting chance in the future. Dad looked at both of them, and having grasped the gravity of the situation, in a trademark fashion, he grabbed the plate, olives and all, and threw it against the wall, shouting, "We'll never be poor again." He certainly rectified this problem in the years to come. His parents decided to emigrate to Australia. He arrived with his parents in Adelaide, December 12, 1955. He was 11 years old. He attended Grange Primary School in 1956, in grade 6. His inability to speak English led him to attend grades 1 and 2 classes in order to help grasp the language more easily. He graduated and proceeded to high school at Theberton Boys Technical High School, at which he stayed until he completed leaving at year 11. By this stage, Jim had become the de facto translator for many of his people and had an incredible knack for languages. His language abilities being proficient in Macedonian, Greek, Bulgarian, Serbian, and snippets of other European languages, and his interaction with government departments led him to a job offer as a translator. He worked in this capacity as a 16-year-old with an exceptional salary for a child of that age, but his need to work hard and with his hands got him out of the office chair pretty quickly. He went on to work at GMH Holdens at 16 years of age. He lied and said he was 21 so that he could get paid a higher wage. And in addition, helped his parents by working in their glass houses, often as the replacement for the ox that pulls the plough. Even this was not enough. He soon took on some overtime work in Chrysler's, and 16-hour working days were to be the norm, not the exception, for the next 8 years for him. Naturally, his pay packets in their entirety were brought straight home and handed to his mother for safekeeping. His parents were upset that he didn't continue with his schooling, but the pay packets that started coming home were for amounts that were simply beyond his parents' imagination. He would always fight for the underdog. He'd tell my brother John and I stories of his youth. We loved them, but sometimes I couldn't help but wonder whether there might have been some embellishment. Imagine my surprise when a client of mine who knew Dad in his youth confirmed one of these stories. On this occasion, some lifesavers at Henley Beach had beaten up a smaller friend of his. Dad had to solve the problem. The end result was him versus 9 of Henley Beach's finest lifesavers. In the Henley pool hall, door locked so nobody gets out. The odds weren't fair. The lifesavers didn't have a chance. They were left, each of them literally hanging on the coat hangers, one by one, very much worse for wear. His incredible ability to communicate with all people gave him an insight that few had. He was as comfortable talking to a weary veteran as he was to a young man. I'm sure many here will never forget conversations they've had with him. He could inspire you to fight 100 wars He could be a sympathetic listener who gave you the confidence to overcome any grievance. These were the traits of a leader. He started working in the Macedonian community of Adelaide in South Australia in 1964 as a committee member. His involvement with the Macedonian United Soccer Club was memorable for all of us. It's remembered as the golden time for many from our community. He became an icon of the South Australian Macedonian community, having represented the local Macedonians as community president, life member, and on wider levels as chairman of the 5EBI ethnic radio station, where the interests of the Macedonians were always afforded the utmost respect. Co-founder of the Australian Association of Macedonian Communities and Vice President of the Independent National Macedonian Orthodox Church of Australia. Having represented the interests of Macedonians in numerous capacities, his memorable meetings with the Australian Prime Minister Keating and numerous state and federal ministers of Australia and in the Republic of Macedonia were of little significance in comparison to his dogged pride in his Australian Macedonian identity and his family. In quiet times of the Macedonian community, there were numerous choices as leaders, but in times of great urgency, his name was the one on everyone's lips. He was known by all patriots in Australia and in Macedonia, and would be remembered as a fierce, uncompromising opponent to anything that weakened the Macedonian cause and identity. His powerful physical and charismatic presence was only surpassed by his love for his family, for Macedonia, and for Australia. His love for Australia was clear to us from a very young age. He would tell my brother and I, "Do not let anyone tell you they are more Australian than you." He was the perfect Australian, a valued contributor to his local community, a helper, a facilitator, and an avid fan of his beloved West Torrens Football Club and the Adelaide Crows Football Club. His commitment to his people and his community was acknowledged by the wider community when he was awarded the Order of Australia Medal in 2004 for services to multiculturalism in South Australia and to the Macedonian community. He met his true love Rena when he was a young boy of 14. The minute he laid eyes on her, he knew she would be his wife. They married in 1965 when he was 20. 10 months later, the apple of his eye, John, was born. And 2 years later, I was born. Dad's heart was broken with the passing of both his parents within a year of each other, and he never completely filled the void. However, of great joy to him was to be blessed with his first grandson, Mitchell, his namesake, from myself and Tanya, then Paul from myself and Tanya, and then finally young Samuel from John and Vesna. We're proud of his achievements and are honoured and humbled by your presence today. I'd like to convey a brief message in Macedonian. Mili užaleni tetki, čičkoje, numkoje I prijatelji. Денеска се собравме тука не само да го изжалиме нашиот Мичо Миланко, туку и да го прославиме како еден од нашите најголеми македонски патриоти. Татко ми имаше многу убави желби за Македонија и за нашите луѓе. Се каже ние сати да видиме заедно, да сме почитувани како способни луѓе од највисока и стара култура. И ние македонците да имаме човекови права во други држави, исто како сати други етнички групи. Сполај ви за вашите топли поздрави и мисли. Благодарни сме за помошта и големата чест оддадена од нашите свештеници од цела Австралија. Исто така благодарни сме што дојдоа многу од нашите роднини, водители и пријатели од цела Австралија. Благодарам.